Welcome back. Today I've got everything you need to know about the Arathi and the Beledar, and trust me, this is going to be pretty damn big. There's a mountain of fresh lore to unpack and many questions. Is Beledar a narrow-dimensional ship, a primordial shard of the light? Is it Anshe? One thing's pretty certain. It is the reason the Arathi are here in Hallowfall. 15 years ago, the Arathi expedition set out, and only months later, crashed into Hallowfall. But what else has happened in that 15 years? You may be thinking about the Day of Darkness, about Sargeras' sword. Well, here's a hint. The Sunwell has not always been a font of life, and today's video even goes back to the Burning Crusade. And by the end of this video, you'll know where the plot is barreling towards, which is, of course, today's sponsor. We're HelloFresh, and I've been a customer of theirs since 2019. Today, you'll learn why, what I'm cooking for dinner, and you can get free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com using code FREEBELLULAR for one free breakfast item per box while your sub's active. So yes, that's free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com with code FREEBELLULAR. Now, they are where I save money, eat better food, cook, and have less stress. And here's what's in this week's box. Today, I'm going to be going for the spiced barbecue pork quesadillas. And the way it works is each week, I get over 45 options, and generally, I tend to go for the rapid meals. They're often one pot or one pan I can just clean while I go, and often really handy like time savers, like things being pre-chopped. And the way it works with HelloFresh is I make one decision a week, right? I select what I want, they handle the rest. That gives me less chores, less to think about, less grocery shopping to do, better food, and a cleaner apartment that is not clogged up with half-empty ingredient containers and that sort of thing. I just get the box delivered to me, pop each meal's bag in the fridge, and I'm good to go. They are a no-brainer. So if you also want free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com, use code FREEBELLULAR. When you do that, you'll get one free breakfast item per box while your sub's active. So, free breakfast for life, HelloFresh.com, code FREEBELLULAR. First, the Arathi. We're told that the Arathi Empire is massive, unified, and powerful. That's because they've got a pretty unique nation-building superpower, somewhat of an ability to tell the future. This is in the form of the Eternal Flame. It's some kind of light plus elemental fire energy that the Arathi worship, and it sends their emperor visions of the future, prophecies to uphold or forestall. Imagine literally being able to tell your next opponent's move, or maybe being able to avert a natural disaster. Now, we've seen this kind of thing before. Zira's predictions got the army of the light to Argus. Locust Walker told us that the light sees one path and shuns all others as lies. But of course, all prophecy must be taken with caution. Velen, the prophet of the Draenei, foresaw much, but ultimately realized that his visions only show where his path may lead. That prophetic power told the Emperor of a coming clash between light and shadow, one the Arathi will be soldiers in, and that the key to their victory lies far beyond their realm and deep beneath the ground. So, he sent a glorious fleet via the air to claim his vision. This fleet sailed for months, passing somewhere known as the Titan's Isle, I have to wonder if we'll visit there soon, and through the Storm Wall, a barrier between us and the other side of Azeroth. Almost certainly evidence of Odin's ancient war against whoever was over there, perhaps even Avalorn, the place mentioned in Odin's edicts that we read during Dragonflight. But back to this expedition. They were the best of the best, armed with the Eternal Flame, with Magi and the fleet's greatest sky captains, but even with all that, they actually thought they were going to die. They found themselves in a horrific torrential storm, but when that happened, they were engulfed with radiant light, and they found themselves transported under the ground. Now, many people still died in the crash. In fact, all but one mage died, and the final embers of the Eternal Flame appeared to die as well. And not only would that be a crisis of faith, but also a logistical one. The flame is important. Luckily for them, Faerun Lothar, a child stowaway, was discovered with the final ember of the flame, just enough to create a new fire. Those that survived beheld Beledar, and they knew that the Emperor's vision must be true, and so they established the city of Merledar. This city, Merledar, was named after the founder of the Arathi's faith, Meladar of the Arathi tribe, all the way back from their days when they lived in the place that we now call the Eastern Kingdoms. And Blizzard absolutely chose that name with intent. You see, Merledar was taught the light by 5 Naru, and I think that is something that will become relevant again soon. By now, we know where the Arathi ended up, and we know why. But the question is, when did they arrive, and what actually sparked the vision that led to the Emperor sending them here? Here's the theory, and if you played the Burning Crusade, you're going to love this. Killing Entropius on Sunwell Plateau and Sargeras' stabbing of Azeroth are directly linked to the Arathi's time in Hallowfall. Wenren, the last Arathi mage, told us that he had been trying to open a portal back home for the last 15 years. That's a lead in this investigation, but figuring out what happened 15 years ago is rather difficult when you're not totally sure what expansion we're talking about. Good news, though, is I figured it out for you. Battle for Azeroth ended 35 years after the Dark Portal closed. We were in the Shadowlands for 2 years, and then we had a 3-year time skip, bringing us to the year 40 whenever we went to the Dragon Isles. The War Within is set a year or so later, making it about year 41. That means that 15 years ago was the year 26 ADP, and that of course was the tail end of the Burning Crusade. And that was the final raid, Sunwell Plateau. Kel'Thas Sunstrider returned from Outland as a puppet of the Legion, and he wanted to summon Kil'jaeden to Azeroth using the Sunwell. The Sunwell, of course, by this stage, had already been drained by Kel'Thuzad. It was effectively destroyed, and that left the fate of the Blood Elves in question. That is, of course, until the Prophet Velen infused the Sunwell with the remaining essence of the Naru Muru, and in doing so he created a font of both Arcane, which is originally what the Sunwell was, and Light. I believe that this was the trigger for Ranalash because the timeline matches up perfectly. Muru, you see, had been tortured into a void state by Liedrin's Blood Knights. That's why we had to kill him in the raid. After this happened, Liedrin journeyed to Outland to ask Adal, another Naru, for forgiveness. She wanted her Blood Knights to not just yield the light that they had stolen from a Naru, no, she wanted them to be genuine wielders of it. At the time, Adal did not sweat it. It was all good. In fact, Velen had a vision that Muru would ultimately sacrifice himself to become one with the Sunwell. So let's think about the Naru. Muru is a Naru sent to Outland by Zira the Lightbinder. Zira, of course, whose fanatical view of the light would bind us all, as we saw in the Legion expansion. Muru came from this sect of the light, and even though it meant torture and sacrifice, ultimately it knew that this was all part of the plan, that this was the right thing to do. Of course, as we know in Warcraft, light and void can slip into the opposing state. Light to void and void to light, as we've seen many times before. Naru can fall to void, and as we see when we look outside in Hallowfall, Beledar can also fall to light. And with that in mind, I want you to think about the Sunwell, because the Sunwell now is infused with light, and that means it's vulnerable to the very same thing, meaning that the Sunwell is the key to the endgame of Void. Now I'm going to make a jump here from talking about lore to talking about Chris Metzen and the game itself. We know 2 things about the coming expansion Midnight. First up, according to Chris Metzen, it will be the final clash between light and shadow. Second, we know it will be a showdown at the Sunwell. Here's what that means. The Emperor's final vision, Ranalash, is described as the final clash between light and shadow. If you put that together with Chris Metzen's words where he said that it will be a final clash between light and shadow, and that will happen at the Sunwell, and I think we see what is happening in the next expansion. And so here is the first takeaway of this investigation. 15 years ago, the infusion of the Sunwell with true light energy from the Naru Muru triggered the Arathi Emperor's vision, and that led to the Arathi expedition that we meet in the War Within. That's that explained. What, though, about Beledar itself? We come upon a Hallowfall in crisis, the Kobus, the Cult of the Night, Nerubians, and now the Harbinger. But it actually wasn't always that bad. They had about a decade to build Beledar in relative peace. That is until what they call the Day of Darkness. The very walls of Hallowfall shook, and Beledar shifted into its void state. This is the next point in the Arathi timeline that we'll be investigating today. Anduin and Illyria in-game tell us that the Arathi's Day of Darkness coincides with when Sargeras stabbed the planet. And when Anduin came upon Beledar the first time, he felt a radiant echo and said it was coming from the crystal. But shortly after, he realized that it wasn't really a radiant echo. He realized that what he just experienced was not the Song of Azeroth, but it was something that felt similar. That, I think, means that they are clearly connected. So what is Blizzard actually trying to tell us here? Well, the word radiant is used quite a lot actually, and it's usually something we associate with the light. As an example, just take a look at the Herald of the Sun hero talent, which does radiant damage. The Emperor's vision of Ranalash was of radiant light. The Arathi fleet was engulfed by what is described as a radiant light. There is little distinction made between what the Arathi saw and what we're seeing in the radiant echoes. And in face value, that's a little bit confusing. You might hear this and think, okay, but Azeroth is a planet with a soul. How is that connected to a strange crystal? What, is Beledar a relay? A signal booster? Is it a Naru spaceship? What the hell is going on? Wow, I think you might like some answers then. Chronicle Volume 1 detailed the first major conflict between Light and Void. Each sent forth countless servants across the cosmos. For the Void, that was the old gods that we have dealt with for decades in-game. For the Light, it was huge crystalline shards designed to fall to planets, embed themselves within, and from there, seed light and life to commence worship. Beledar, of course, did not fall to Azeroth 15 years ago. That would be pretty insane. Blizzard couldn't get away with nobody noticing that. So no, it had to have been a very long time ago. Probably in and around when the old gods first arrived, because, again, this is going to the deep past. And just as those old gods were there to infuse Azeroth's world soul with the Void, as we see in the War Within cinematic, the likes of Beledar, well, those are there to infuse it with the light. That is our second and third major pieces of evidence. The second, Beledar's void cycle was caused by Sargeras' sword, and the third, Beledar seems to hail from Azeroth's early days, a fragment of the very first conflict between light and void. So let's bring this all together and have a vision of what's going to happen next. The Arathi's glorious mission to Hallowfall in a way seemed to succeed. They did see something that almost proved the Emperor's vision. But of course, now they're stuck underground, and with that, nobody was really sure what they're supposed to be doing down there, but they couldn't really leave. And many of the Arathi have got different opinions of really what the whole point of this stuff is. Some are content to just farmstead, to blindly sort of trust the Emperor's vision and stay there. Others, though, see themselves as the sanctified vanguard. They see themselves as the first soldiers of Ranalash already in the trenches. And when we come upon an Arathi scout, we see their own understanding of this. Here's a quote. "I now understand its divine path. This place, this hallowed ground that is tainted with darkness. It is up to us to chart this new land, to bring Beledar's light to all corners and past the dark ocean." By that, he of course means the huge ocean off Hallowfall shore, an ocean that is very clearly corrupted. You find the Kobus, you fight them, and when you're doing that, you come upon a peculiar fish. And I'm going to have a deep dive into this wacky but very significant quest change soon. For now, though, after saving our little void fish friend, he warns us that if we bring Beledar's light to the Dark Ocean's depths, that it will be our crushing end. The light wants this final showdown just as much as the void wants to corrupt the Sunwell and likely manifest the Void Lord Dimensius. And with that in mind, remember Khadgar's last words.
This isn't the real fight. No!
The War Within is only a preamble. We are meeting characters and seeing powers that are going to explosively crash in the very near future. Everything, and I mean everything we are seeing on Hallowfall is building towards that clash. The Arathi are arming themselves with faith, steel, and new allies. Beledar is seemingly struggling with itself, turning between light and void. And there's no doubt the Arathi Empire itself has been preparing for this final battle during the 15 years of its expedition's absence. We now understand that the light's influence in the Sunwell triggered the Emperor's vision, leading to this expedition where they found Beledar. Beledar appears to be one of the crystals of pure light sent throughout the cosmos, right in the earliest days when the Void was sending out the old gods. It is all coming together now. And to me, that means that whenever the final clash between light and void happens, I would not be surprised if the full Arathi fleet joins us. Maybe at the start of midnight, maybe in the middle, or maybe at the end. Let me know what you think. And if you want to hear some more amazing lore, I don't actually think that Khadgar's dead. To learn why, you can check out this video next. Have a wonderful day.